big real estate stories for Tri-Cities in 2024. Number 8 is that Chick-Fil-A finally announced that they were breaking ground here at Tri-Cities.
Yes.
I don't know how many times this has been speculated, talked about, written about, but huge 2024 story. John, do you know where they're going?
On Canal Drive.
Gosh, darn it, you're paying attention over there. Okay. So, I wanted to come up with a top 10 real estate stories that both happened nationally and here locally in the Tri-Cities that people talked a lot about. There was a lot of comments online, a lot of news articles about, and really kind of come to have an impact on you here in the Tri-Cities. So number 10, I'm going to count down from 10 to the top real estate story in 2024.
Okay.
Number 10 that I have on my list that I came up with again, and the reason this is a story, because a lot of people were predicting this would not be the case. So the number 10 story is that U.S. home prices increase again. Okay, and at the beginning of the year, we had high interest rates. We're going to talk more about that later in the show. But U.S. home prices still managed, in the environment that we were in, to rise 4.3% on a national level.
Wow.
So every part of the U.S. except the District of Columbia and Louisiana, those were the two outliers. Every other part of the U.S. metropolitan areas saw rising prices. And what was interesting is even with all of the problems you saw in the news about condos and assessments and HOAs in Florida and building restrictions, they still had increase on prices in Miami and some of those other markets, which a lot of people were predicting would not happen. And so NAR released a study that said since 2019, a typical homeowner has accumulated nearly $150,000 in value since 2019. So
wow.
Once again, there had been tons of doomsday predictions that prices were going to go down, and they were finally, with higher interest rates, going to go down. And that just did not happen. So that was my number 10 news story. And at the first of the year, we always do a show where I dig really deep and nerd out into the specific cities and neighborhoods in Tri-Cities. And once I have all of my data for the end of December that comes in from the association and collected, we'll look specifically on how that impacted the Tri-Cities market. But knowing what I know already, we're going to see some similar impacts on the national level that come here into Tri-Cities to take place. So number 9, I'm gonna filter in a local story here.
Okay.
That was a big one, commented on a ton in Tri-Cities. And this is number 9 is actually a combination of 2 real estate transactions and big moves for local Tri-Citians. So number 1, the first part of this is that Sun Pacific Energy, which is owned by the Eerkes family.
Yes.
Everybody that's grown up in Tri-Cities know that, years ago we had the Sun Marts that sold and then converted to Circle K's. Well, then once again, they were rebuilding gorgeous, gorgeous stores and starting to that rebuild process. Well, at the early part of the year, they sold everything, divested of oil and gas. So Sun Pacific Energy, they sold their retail, dealer, wholesale, and transportation assets to an Idaho company called PacWest Energy. Fast forward to 5 months later, what does that family do but reinvest into Tri-Cities and then purchase the Canyon Lakes golf course? Okay. And
that was big.
That's a big Tri-Cities real estate deal, right? And that came in at number 9. And You have some local ownership there of the golf course that had owned it for the last 30 years with the Lundgren family and the Graff family, and then selling to another local ownership group, which is awesome, that has always been very, very invested in golf and then the Tri-Cities in general. So really, really cool to see some big real estate transactions like that happening. And that came in at number 9 on my list. So it's funny when you start to look at big real estate stories for 2024. Now, sometimes big does not necessarily mean dollar value. So I didn't just rank these based upon dollar values.
Okay.
I ranked these stories along the lines of the impact that they have, also the buzz that was created around Tri-Cities, how many comments were in the articles as they were posted and the responses, and how many times was this written about in different ways. So coming in at number 8, big real estate stories for Tri-Cities in 2024. Number 8 is that Chick-Fil-A finally announced that they were breaking ground here at Tri-Cities.
Yes.
I don't know how many times this has been speculated, talked about, written about, but huge 2024 story. John, do you know where they're going?
On Canal
Gosh,
Drive.
darn it. You're paying attention over you. Okay. You don't have to know these things, but I'm excited that you do. So on Canal, beside the Wendy's, that might be a whole nother case study.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
But between Wendy's and the Dodge dealership there in the front parking lot, you have, they put in permits. November, those permits went in $1.1 million in permits. It's a 5,000 square foot building that will have inside seating for 70, 96 parking stalls. And I'm sure the first month that they open will create an absolute Blue Bridge-esque traffic debacle. Can you imagine when they open?
Yes,
I
because
might wait a month.
I remember when Dutch Bros opened in Kennewick
Right,
on
exactly.
Clearwater and Union, and there were people around the block.
Yeah, so that's going to be a continuation story, but
Yes.
I'm excited for the Tri-Cities. I know a lot of people, they have a real dynamic following. I know a lot of people were working to put that deal together and where they were going to end up. And I do have to say, though, it is a nice size parking lot for the amount of traffic that they have. Like, you see some of these developments go in and they're jammed in too small of an area, and it does. I think they're at least starting with a great access point. So it'll be fun to see how that develops out. Okay, we're switching gears up a little bit, and I'm going to take you back to a national trend which we start to see show up. And so I've got for you, coming in at number 7 in real estate stories for 2024, 2 very high-end trends in high-end luxury building and upper price points luxury building. We saw the evolution of 2 trends continue this year. So number 1 on that list is health and wellness is still pushing heavily into high-end homes. You've kind of seen the resurgence of the in-home sauna. Like, that was really popular 25 years ago, and then you didn't see them, or if you saw them in a house, you were kind of like, that's weird.
Are we talking pools too?
Yeah, pools, saunas, infrared saunas. You now have cold plunge tubs going in to these high-end houses. We started to see those show up at the parade homes in Tri-Cities this last year, to where you have both a regular tub, but you also have a cold plunge tub in the same room. So these health and wellness trends hitting the high-end luxury market here in Tri-Cities. So that was the first part of my number 7 story. Now the second part, John, I'm going to quiz you again.
All right.
And I am going to be, well, no, I'm not going to comment. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, John. The second part of this trend that is starting to show up in these high-end homes is the Costco door. Do you know about the Costco door, John? I actually hope you don't.
It's a door that is activated with some sort of a key card security tech.
Okay, that was a
roll door.
That was a good guess, but that is not what it is. In high-end home building, what they're starting to do is they're starting to design the walk-in pantries off of the kitchen to have a shared wall with the garage.
Oh, and then they have a door.
Shared wall, they're putting like a mini door framed out that either goes onto a shelf in the pantry or goes onto the bottom floor, so that when you come home from Costco with your 48 water count, your soda, all your heavy items, you literally pull into the garage, open the back of your car, you open the Costco door, and you just shuttle all of that stuff into the pantry.
Wow.
And then you can walk, you don't have to lug it all the way through the house, and then you can just walk in and deal with it when you need to. So the Costco door is starting to show up in some of these builds, luxury high-end houses. So that made my list as the amenity that we didn't know we all needed that is coming into play. Number 6 on the list for Tri-Cities real estate stories is we saw in 2024, we saw HGTV show up in the Tri-Cities on 2 separate occasions for filming. So one of them we actually had a personal connection to. 2 years ago, one of my agents had sold a house that needed a massive renovation in West Richland out on the Yakima River. So we had that whole house listed for the estate. It sold. And then it showed up on an episode of The Ugliest Houses in America.
Wow.
Because they were competing for a $150,000 makeover. It ended up not being the final winner of that, but was on the show. There was filming done at the house by HGTV. Then we've also had HGTV back in the market filming House Hunters episode with Ashley Martin over at Remax. And so it's pretty rare when I look at a market like Tri-Cities. I would not have been saying this 5 years ago that we were even on the map for for HGTV to be here. They've been here before in the past for episodes, but it was funny to see them show up like a couple different times, and there's probably a third one that I don't even know about. But they have been on social media, on the stories, commented on, and definitely the Tri-Cities is on the map for some of those national real estate shows. I had to put on the list, I wanted to get out there nationally the hottest overall real estate markets. So my real estate story, number 5, coming in at number 5.
Okay.
The hottest real estate markets, number 1 with the highest score. There was actually a tie. So 1 and 2. So Austin, Texas, hot real estate market in 2024. And tied with, and here's what's crazy, tied with a completely different market, but also tons of demand, lots of movement. Kansas City coming in that spot as well. Number 3, Philadelphia. Number 4, Omaha, Nebraska. And then number 5, another Texas city. We've got Houston coming in at the number 5 slot. So what's interesting about this is how the market nationally has kind of changed a little bit, because we're definitely now well outside, I call it the echo COVID, craziness that happened, which pushed a lot of people to the East Coast and West Coast markets, vacation type home markets, recreation markets. But now what you see happening as people have gone back to more a hybrid remote work situation, where they're a few days in the office and then a few days remote, people have had to move back to some of these economic centers. So all of these markets seem to be markets that are very close to some of the big city amenities, but just outside of that expensive bubble. So they're like commuter markets are now back again. And so we're seeing a lot of demand and a lot of movement in these commuter type markets. So number 5, hottest real estate markets overall. Number 4, taking you back right here local in Tri-Cities. What I've got down is the number 4 story, real estate story. And this wasn't so much as a transaction that happened in 2024, but the result of previous transactions. And that is we finally saw Amazon start the hiring process and opening one of their facilities that had sat idle in Pasco. Along with that, you have them make an announcement to also in Pasco be building a third facility. And then also you layer in on top of that, North Pasco. Not only did they have the Love's truck stop open, they had announcements of another major truck stop that's going to be coming to the area out there. There is also talk of plans moving forward by the Colville tribes for the casino in North Pasco. And then also continued construction. If you're out on 395, you can see that Darigold plant, $600 million worth of construction that has been moving forward in 2024. You really have a massive amount of light industrial and industrial infrastructure that has gone into North Pasco. We're starting now to see the results of those hires. I personally and my team have sold a number of those homes to the Amazon transfers and the hires coming this way. Some of the Darigold is now starting to prep with who's going to be operating those plants. And so from a real estate perspective, we see these big, huge industrial projects that are expanding and are bringing those jobs that are transferring to local dollars in the real estate market. And so that was my number 4 story in the real estate market for Tri-Cities. Now, John, number 3, there's a big one out there that we haven't talked about with real estate transactions in 2024 and the Tri-Cities. We took care of Chick-Fil-A.
Yeah.
So there's another big missing one that there was controversy about the city they were going to, where they finally ended up.
Costco.
Oh, you nailed it. Gotcha. A huge Tri-Cities 2024 real estate story is that Costco broke ground in Richland after the Pasco debacle that was so talked about in the news. I'm lumping all those stories together as the Costco story. So permits show that the main store will be 182,000 square feet. Permits in at $25 million with that to build. In addition, out there, an additional Costco gas station, plus commercial, other commercial space that will be available. They say that fueling station will have 32 positions. And that is being built by Leidig Construction as the contractor on that. So big, huge influx of commercial coming to that Queensgate, Dupertail area out there in Richland / right on the border of West Richland. And so that was a big 2024 story. They've been talking about it for years. There was tons of rumors, but with those permits in place, it is in 2024, it was cemented, actually happening. And once again, those are jobs that relate directly to the real estate agents at my firm that we have, we've worked with transferees for those companies already. They've reached out to us. That is generating local community dollars already flowing into firms like ourselves that we operate. So that was my number 3 Tri-Cities real estate story. Number 2 on that list has to be, and here we're going to get to some national trends that affect and impact the local real estate market. So number 2 on that list that I have is we saw mortgage rates drop from a high of 7.5%, roughly 7.675 earlier in the year, to now they've been floating the last few months around 6.5. Now, this changed affordability in our market drastically. When you look at a full point like that, you look at inflation coming down, you look at the Fed lowering those basis points on those rates. It really increased buying power in the second half of the year. And you saw the results of that in the Tri-Cities market. It was a massive, massive impact on what happened. And so that was my number 2 story because it really drove decision-making by local buyers in our market. And on the commercial side of real estate as well. The investment that these people are making, the multifamily projects that are going in, a lot of these have to do with where rates are at and what's happening with rates for those investors. And number 1 on the list as we round out the top stories, we talked a lot about it this year. We had 3 or 4 different shows about it. But the number 1 2024 real estate story was the settlement of commission lawsuits in the real estate industry. Mm-hmm. And in response to that, you had Washington State change agency law at the first part of the year as we rolled into January. As agency law was updated in Washington State, new contracts were rolled out. Then you have a massive settlement. This is all related to the commission lawsuits and separating the buyer commission from the seller commission, really the point of where they're trying to get the industry to go to. Then you had the National Association of Realtors with settlement, and then implementing those in August, those changes to where buyers basically have to have an agreement signed to go look at homes. They haven't had to do that in ever, since I've been in real estate, which might as well be forever. I'm so old now. So when you look at that, it just wasn't a thing that was in place before. So now you have agreements for buyers and how they're being represented that they're signing. You have buyers paying more of their own commission in the real estate transactions in certain cases. And you just have a massive amount of change in the real estate industry and how agents are dealing with that. It's not over, but the big shakeup has happened.
Yes.
They're still working through what this means to the industry. There's still some unsettled lawsuits out there on a national level that could have impact. But the big shakeup and the change that we went through this year, a lot of that has been implemented. And that was one of the biggest disruptors that we saw in the industry. So that is my top 10 2024 stories that we talked about throughout the year, transactions that we had that was important to our listeners, and what was in the news cycle around Tri-Cities. Thank you for letting us be a part of that and report on that throughout the year. It's been a fantastic year, and we've had a lot to talk about. And I still think there's a lot of surprises coming in 2025.
Oh, yeah.
So please, everybody, have an absolutely safe and happy new year. And I look forward to talking to you next year about what I think will be happening in 2025.